Alright guys, TacticalRab back again today. Hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far. Welcome back to Valorant news and plenty to dive into today with the VCT back in action here in just a couple of days time. It seems Sentinels are searching for a new coach, but Ethan certainly having a few words to say to Riot on why exactly they're playing on the new patch update this soon. Very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed the video. Subscribe if you are new as always. I'd greatly appreciate it. Really upset the channel. Thank you very much indeed for doing that. And thanks for all the support over the last couple of days. Yesterday's video popped off. Firstly, there's some guard Valin. Still think about you, Astra. Rest in peace. She, Sabrosa was saying yesterday she might still be viable on certain maps, but are definitely falling down the pecking order of the controllers right now. We shall see what teams actually do when this meta is played. Very excited for this coming weekend of matches, because we are going to get to see what this new meta looks like in the hands of the pros. Some pros aren't particularly happy that, this change is being made so quickly, but of course if you don't make this change so quickly, then the playoffs become a bit of a question mark as to how much practice the teams get to have before that. We'll discuss that here in a few minutes. Lots of talk also about the other agents in the meta right now. Neon is by far the worst agent in Valorant, as I will saw worst jet right here. Haven't seen her since like week 1 of release. Occasionally we do see Neon come into play, but not all that often, to be perfectly honest. To be honest, I kind of like it that when a new agent is brought in, it's generally better if they're not just incredibly overpowered. Chamber honestly has seen a fair bit of use so far. I think it's exciting to see his progress in the competitive meta. Maybe Neon at some point or another, people will figure out how to use her, but for now she is way down the pecking order. Brimstone Stimbeacon as a character. No, it's not right, Michael. Now this also from Cloud9. Enrollment has ended. We've got our new students. Please welcome Bossy, Geezer and Neiliaz to the Cloud9 Valorant Academy. Pretty cool stuff. Of course, they've got their starting roster, Cloud9 Blue. Very solid roster right now, #1 in North America. No questions about it. We'll see if the guard can potentially dethrone them. Right, it's coming up later this weekend. Both teams, I'm pretty sure, undefeated so far in Group A. We'll have a look at those groups here in a few minutes' time. But yeah, cool to see that Cloud9 are up to this. This also from TSM real quick, because of course they talked about after they failed to qualify for challenges, this team was going to make some serious moves to try and actually improve. Playing a load more of these online Mickey Mouse tournaments, but also kind of rethink their culture and what they want to do with their roster. So far, they have not made any roster changes. I think that's understandable and makes a fair bit of sense. But also, as Dominic points out, this kind of the VP of esports over at TSM, player housing in Austin has officially been secured. That being in Austin, Texas. Players will start moving to Austin March 14th through to March the 18th. Cancelled due to travel. Next event is going to be the Knights Arena Gauntlet, March 21st to the 23rd. So definitely feel like they're taking things serious, moving everyone out to the same facility, get some good practice in, like great regional location as well to play against other teams on good ping, get good practice. Loads of players are out there right now across all different esports and playing a load of these online tourneys. So this is TSM's plan, right, to make sure they qualify for stage 2 and beyond, and I think they're probably taking steps in the right direction at the present time. One team also looking to take steps in the right direction is none other than Sentinels. They of course lost their coach in Raucus, who was their coach for Champions. He it was some sort of weird situation with the buyout from FaZe. He wanted to become their full-time coach. They couldn't come to an agreement with his buyout from FaZe, so now Raucus is technically a FaZe player again, even though he does not intend to be a player for that roster anymore, of course. That now leaves Sentinels needing a new coach. There was a fair bit of talk about this, right? Just the way that Sentinels' playstyle is. They probably need a coach in certain situations to help them with their plays. Like, of course, most great teams have a coach in the game. So what? They're looking for another option. The most recent trial was iRemix, seemingly an Overwatch player. They've, of course, already secured qualification for the playoffs, so I guess that they have a little bit of time to work with things here. They play version 1, I believe, on the weekend. If they win that, they'll be 4-1. They'll actually get #1 seed in their group if they win that, based on winning the head-to-head tiebreaker against V1. That will be, both teams will be 4-1 if that happens at that point. But yeah, certainly a lot of talk about who they could potentially bring on here. Doesn't hurt to just, try for the coach position. Wish me luck, buy shotgun, all this type of good stuff. But as the article describes, contractually I have to change all my things back to FaZe, says Raucus back on February 26th. Sentinels are competing in the right hosted, VCT, of course, currently in second place. They're still looking for an option, right, in terms of their coaching stuff. So we'll see how that one goes. Also saw this from some of the players, right? Zom says, we wanted Mike HD, but a crew offered more. So that's the thing, obviously tongue-in-cheek. But he was the coach, I believe, before for Envy for a brief period of time. That actually did really well with Mike's on the roster. But then there was some weird contract stuff that happened where for some reason they didn't get him a contract in time, and he effectively got let go of the team, despite being clearly very good. Now Chet Singh, I believe, comes in to Envy instead, now part of Optic, of course, until I believe Mike HD is going to accrue instead. So definitely quite interesting that a guy like this wouldn't be snapped up by Sentinels if the opportunity was there. I'm sure there's a crew probably are going to offer more if they actually wanted to go down this route, but other options potentially being considered. Like, I thought it was kind of funny from ShahZaM saying we're trying out its captain, of course the head coach of Ghost Gaming. So maybe some options out there if you guys know any coaches that you think could be viable for this one. Definitely let me know in the comment section below. And as ShahZaM is saying, can he help Sue, right? Need a guy like the T1 coach who can help Sue when the time is right. But yeah, probably a step up for Sentinels depending on who they get, but there's definitely a lot of different tiers in terms of coaches in the scene, so maybe they'll get a good one, who knows. Like, a lot of talk about exactly what Raucus brought to the team. Seemed like he brought a fair bit in terms of new strats and new ideas, ideas, like just kind of a fresh way of thinking about the game. But I mean, still, they won't have his services going forward for the rest of the season. Let's talk about the kind of meta changes right now then. So as Ye says, bro, I don't even know the game I'm playing anymore. This meta is straight up wild. So many things have changed so quickly in terms of the way the meta is played. It seems that TenZ is very excited about the Yoru meta fully coming into effect. He seems to potentially be using that in some of his matches as well. Hopefully he will use it up against version 1 this coming weekend. But still, teams are going to have to adapt to this very quickly indeed, because the final set of matches this coming weekend are going to be played on this new meta. Now, of course, the actual playoffs is just 1 week after that. But some have been saying whether this should come into play so quickly, because at the end of the day, it feels kind of weird that most of the qualification games are played on the old meta, and then the final one is now played on the new meta. So as well, Ethan says, in what world does it make sense for the final VCT match to be played on 4.04? Obviously, we can't make playoffs, but for teams battling for a spot in playoffs, going from practicing specifically on the old patch to having less than a week to prep for 4.04, that's messed up, he says. Now, of course, doesn't really affect the 100 Thieves guys, but even then, it's somewhat strange that, some teams will have already qualified now, and will obviously want to be practicing on the new patch to get ready for playoffs, but if Riot agreed with Ethan's idea of not updating quite yet, then teams that hadn't qualified would still want to practice on the old patch, which creates kind of a weird dichotomy between the two sets of teams, the ones that have qualified and ones that haven't quite yet. So I honestly feel like what Riot are doing makes sense here. The thing that I think you can dispute is the timing of this update in general. Like a major update like this, a major patch update, really should not be something I would argue that should happen during the middle of a VCT stage. Like this is something that probably should have happened at the start of the year. They made some changes right at the start of the year, like in January sometime. That's really the time that a change like this should come through. Such a major change to the way the meta is going to work, like probably something that should happen after Champions, before the new season begins, or just between stages. Like to happen mid-stage is probably quite problematic. At the same time though, it does mean that the best teams have to adapt very quickly, which is kind of what Valorant's all about. So I think for fans, it makes an incredibly exciting experience. For players, I'm sure it can be frustrating. Now, as Ekel says in reply, as I was saying right here, honestly not sure why they didn't make these changes right after Champions. Then at least all teams have the same prep time for the new meta for a new season, even wait until after Iceland to do it right after the Masters. Changing mid-season seems kind of cap, he reckons. Now, of course, there was some further response to this. I mean, Chet says actually from Optic, it's because Riot are straight up brained it. They have no idea what they're playing at. Of course, for Optic, they haven't actually yet qualified. So it's quite interesting, because if they lose their next match and Rise win their next match, Optic, I believe, are going to be out of qualification for playoffs, which is quite surprising that that's even possible, but it is certainly up in the air right now after their series loss this past weekend to version 1. Of course, I'm sure they're not particularly happy that they have to play a must-win series for them on a situation where they have to play a must-win series on a very new patch to all the players right now. So kind of frustrating. Now, well, as Ethan actually said right here, would it really make that much difference if they waited until playoff teams were secured in order to make the change? The problem with this being that, there's only 1 more week of VCT qualification games, and after that, there's only a few days off before the playoffs. So what's better, right? Is it better now? And Ethan kind of agrees with this in the end after thinking about it. It's probably better to have 1 week of practice for the last VCT match than 1 week of practice before the playoffs. He changed his mind, thanks to coming everyone to the TED Talk and to the discussion on this. But yeah, it probably is better on the whole, and also it's more interesting for fans, I would say. Just have this 1 week of just kind of craziness in the meta, and then at least the teams have a couple of weeks to practice before the playoffs. Because if they changed it like 3 days before the playoffs, that would probably create even more randomness than at least having 1 set of matches these teams can play. So these then are the groups as they stand right now. And of course, crucially, if there was like 2 weeks off, or at least like a week off between the end of the group stage and the start of the main event, the playoffs as it's called, where the top 2 teams at the playoffs go through to Masters, then you could maybe say, okay, maybe you just keep the patch same for the entirety of the group stage and then change it just for the playoffs. But if you do that, then you've basically given the teams any time, because of course this finishes on March the 13th in terms of the group stage, here in just a few days time on the Sunday, and then the following weekend, that's when the playoffs begins. These are the situations right now. So of course version 1 Sentinels still to play each other, so if Sentinels win that, they'll be 4-1 top in the group. Guard and Cloud9 also have to play each other, so that's a very exciting game, and it's still all to play for here with Optic and Rise actually in this group B that can potentially swap places depending on how things go. Just to mention the EMEA side as well, because a couple of you guys were asking for me to just show how things are shaping up over here. A lot of these games haven't even happened as of yet, as I'm sure you guys can tell, because of the delays with all the stuff going on, and the playoffs here are actually March 22nd, so in fairness, there's kind of an extra few days. Now, of course, they're actually not going to be able to get all these games done in time, unfortunately, so they're going to have to figure out when the playoffs happen, but still, it does seem like they're going to make these changes quite quickly as well, in terms of the meta stuff in the European side also. Just talking of Optic, right, because of course they have a pretty difficult time ahead of them. Fracture is actually a really good map. Ye seems to be particularly happy about it. Not everyone is convinced on this front row that they actually like Fracture, but maybe it'll grow on people over time, as it maybe has done to Ye. This also I thought was quite interesting, especially discussing Sentinels. This is first blood percentage across all teams here in the VCT. So the usual suspects you might expect at the top, the Guard, Cloud9 version 1, all teams currently that are 4-0. First kill on attack 57% of the time, Cloud9 actually somewhat lower, but on defense is way higher. Like, Cloud9's defense is insane. Almost 70% of the time, they get the first kill in the rounds, and a first kill overall very high indeed. I think the kind of interesting one to me is that Sentinels way down here on the attacking side at least, at 39% first blood. 100 Thieves also have the lowest first kill on the attacking side percentage in the entire VCT for North America. Now, they certainly have a solid one on the defensive side, but yeah, on the attacking side, that's not particularly pretty. Like, the best teams are in the 50+% even on their attack, which, I mean, just gives them a massive advantage in the rounds. Like, a lot of teams, it's not too hard to be good at defense, right? We see pretty high numbers here for 100 Thieves Sentinels as well, not too dissimilar to some of the top squads. It's the attacking side that really seems to be letting 100 Thieves down, especially. Sentinels so far seem to have got away with it, but maybe not the prettiest stat as time progresses. So very much intrigued to your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did enjoy it, hit that like button, tell us the YouTube gods, this is a good video, I'd just like you should see it as well, and I've grown the competitive Valorant community. Thank you for watching as always, take care, and I will see you next time.